2020, the year dominated by the deadly COVID-19 virus. As we all know, on the 23rd of March 2020, the UK went into a full lockdown which lasted up until July 2020. Because it is now 2021 and the UK is going into a third lockdown, I decided to create a documentary style podcast to find out how the first and longest UK lockdown so far affected people. When I asked the question, how did the first UK lockdown affect you? I received a range of answers. Some of the ways people were affected include: it inspired me to work harder, it had a negative effect on my mental health, but it brought me closer to my family, and my mental health was bad and I wanted it all to go away. As lockdown was different for everyone and affected people in different ways, I was glad to see people sharing their experience with me, as it gives me an insight to how different people were affected by lockdown. As mental health would have affected a lot of people during the pandemic, I decided to look at how many people were affected by depression and discovered that almost 1 in 5 adults were likely to be experiencing some form of depression during the coronavirus pandemic. When I asked people what they did to pass the time during lockdown, some of the responses were: wrote music and built my brand, created music and learned how to cook, Netflix, and running, which improved my health. As I wasn't really that productive over the first lockdown, it's nice to hear that people used that time to create content, improve their cooking skills, and worked on bettering their health to pass the time. As exercising was a big part of lockdown, which helped to both pass the time and stay fit, I found that the fitness app Couch to 5K, backed by the NHS, had around 1 million downloads during lockdown, which is huge considering the app had just 448,000 downloads the previous year. Because the first lockdown was different for everyone, I asked people, if we were in a lockdown as long as the first one again, would you do anything differently? Some of the responses include: I would be more open about my situation on my socials and reach out more, and I'd learn something that takes up a lot of my time, like to cook really well or play the guitar. Finally, as we all know, panic buying was a massive issue at the start of the UK lockdown and the shelves were bare. In fact, panic buyers in the UK made an extra 80 million shopping trips, spending almost £2 billion more on food and drink than in 2019. Because panic buying was such a big issue, I asked people what their thoughts were on the subject. Some of these include: really selfish because it meant a lot of people had to go without essentials for a very long time, and it was selfish and inconsiderate of people, as elderly and vulnerable people who didn't go out much weren't able to buy the essentials. Thanks to everyone who contributed towards this podcast and shared their views and experiences, and thanks to everyone who listened. I know that the first lockdown was hard and different for everyone, and I have learnt a lot about how it affected different people, so thank you for sharing your experiences.